Well, damn. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Final episode of Loki is dropped for all time, always. Uh, and it's a doozy. It is a doozy. This one probably satiates the appetites of a lot of the prognosticators and theory makers and all that stuff because unlike with WandaVision, who was people have been saying Mephisto, 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 and you didn't get that, and people said, "Oh, I sort of felt let down." Here, people have been like, "It's Kang, Kang, Kang" the whole time, and what probably most people thought was like, "Hey, we're going to get sort of a snippet of Kang in the future or a little piece of it," not realizing that we're going to go full blown Kang in this one episode, and Jonathan Majors shows up, and the role that we all know that he's going to be playing in Ant Man has played Kane, a version of Kane. As many people who may not be that familiar with the comics, Kane comes back and has multiple versions of himself that exist throughout all of time. And so we get a version of this of Kane who Jonathan Majors knocks this thing out of the damn park. Like I've been a Jonathan Majors fan. I was one of the 7 people who saw The Last Black Man in San Francisco in a theater, and so I knew this guy. So when I saw him pop up in Lovecraft and I see the western that he's got coming out from Netflix, I'm excited to sort of consume whatever it is he's doing because I enjoy it. But man, he puts on a show that he is having a damn ball, and it is going to be a delight as a fan to just see him go through the Marvel Cinematic Universe as sort of the next big bad. What I think probably is going to be the next big bag for anything that is sort of space or time related. I think we're still going to have a street level stuff with whatever's happening with like Hawkeye and Black Widow. But when we get into the fantastical stuff and the strange and probably where end up Spider Man sort of, even though he's a street level character, he's too big to not play in that world. Um, I think we're going to start having Kang be a part of for most of that, and I'm here for it. If anyone ever has watched Star Trek, with the vibes that I was sort of getting of what his performance felt a lot like Q from the Next Generation, where it's super philosophical. He's the smartest man in the room, but he's also the most dangerous, and we get a glimpse of how highly intelligent he is here, but knowing that you know what's about to come, he's going to be there's going to be a much different versions of this character, so it's going to be fun to see Jonathan Majors go in and out of the different versions of Kang that exist throughout all of them. But he is having a ball. What this episode does probably better than acting as a season finale for Loki, and yes, I said season, um, is that it is a good jump off point for whatever we're going to get in the future as far as the time stuff goes in this. We know there was immediately released after this episode aired that Loki would be showing up in Doctor Strange. So you got Wanda, Loki, Spidey, and Strange, and that Strange showing up in Spidey. It's going to start getting in Ant Man. Obviously, it's all going to lead toward to sort of to that as well. And so we're getting into this world where everything's sort of starting to crack, and we're starting to see the threads of what a lot of Phase Four is going to be about. Not all of it, because Shang-Chi probably doesn't fit into this. The Eternals may or may not, but for sure something as tight knit and small as like Hawkeye and what we got with Black Widow, and probably to an extent Black Panther may not. But this was sort of setting the groundwork for what we're to expect in Phase Four. The problem with that is, if you're a fan who has enjoyed what you've been getting through Loki, this feels sort of a bit of a letdown from what this series has been sort of setting up from this point. Yes, Kang has been known to be the villain, but we have a lot of threads that are still dangling at the end of this episode. What I did love is that the interaction between Sylvie and Loki sort of comes to a head. And typically, the person that you expect to sort of turn their back or lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead, our Loki, uh, was not the one who so much turned back. He was really just settled down and like, hey, we can run this, we can do this. Kang presents an option to them. Loki's like, that might be a good idea as long as I get to stay with her. And she's like, no, I don't need you around. I'm gonna do my own thing, and is ready to take Loki's life for it. And there's a brief moment. This just shows you how great everybody's acting their butt off, and just it's basically a three person act that's happening. But Tom just delivers the fact of just pure heartbrokenness because for the first time ever, he's been betrayed when normally he is the one betraying, and it's impressive to see. But that's the only thing that really gets any sort of a resolution or even a we're going to go from here to there type of scenario. The rest of the show, Mobius and Ravonna and B-15, like none of them really type getting a resolution. They're off to the sides for the majority of this episode. So for a season finale where most of this stuff led up to that, what happens to the rest of the TVA when they start finding out that they're not who they say they are, and all of this stuff and threads and Ravonna just goes off. There's a lot of outlying questions that don't get answered here, where it seems like the major focus is let's get everything on the board to set up Kang and go on forth with Strange, Spidey, and whatever else we have in the future, and Ant-Man eventually, and everything else we have in the future. But we'll save all this stuff to season 2, which is why I said earlier, season finale, we are getting a season 2. It's sort of the post-credit sequence that there will be a season 2. So that lines up what we're going to get. I think what is going to happen, because it's weird, this doesn't feel like a season. It feels like a part 1 of a season, and we're going to get a part 2. But what feels like happens is that we're going to end up turning Loki probably back to being a full-on just bad. He's not going to care. He's not going to put his feelings out there anymore. Where I had always been saying that one of the two Lokis would die, so that the other one, sort of like the Deadpool. If anybody saw that Deadpool trailer reaction, where Deadpool sort of makes a joke that he fridged his girl Vanessa. He fridged the girl. I think it was Vanessa. He fridged the girl in that movie to sort of make himself feel more pain and struggle. That's what I thought was going to happen here, but instead they both live. It's just the betrayal becomes that impetus where I think Loki's now going to be. He's going to go back to being an asshole again. Understandably so. I mean, as anybody who's ever had their heart broken, you usually start lashing out for the next few people who come around. They don't end up on the good side of your love. So it's going to be interesting to see where he falls. It's going to be fascinating to see. We haven't had much interaction other than the end of, I believe, Thor, the beginning of Thor. We haven't had much interaction between Strange and Loki, but obviously Strange is aware of Loki. But now it's going to be interesting to know that he's in that story on Doctor Strange. Wanda's in there. So it's just a lot of powerful beasts. It's going to be a mess in that multitude of madness. And I'm excited to just see what that all comes from. It's interesting. All 3 series that have existed so far on Disney Plus have done 3 completely different things. Like for me, WandaVision is still probably my overall favorite. I think from start to finish, I didn't have a problem with the slow build in the comedy. I loved it. It was very unnerving, and it got to where it needed to. And the story of grief is something that I could really relate to, and it hit home for me. That by far is still my favorite. I think Loki, execution wise, is probably is high. I think those first 2 episodes was really good. But then for me, it sort of meanders a little bit. And it's a lot of great character building, but it's sort of a stop and start a lot with that. And I think it sticks the landing. For me, it sticks the landing because it world builds. But I know for some, it doesn't stick the landing because you wanted more closure with whatever we were getting story-wise with this. But because we're getting a season 2, I'm a little bit more forgiving of that. And then there's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I don't think stuck the landing. I think had some rough patches in the middle. It started off great, but I think overall the point of it was to put Sam and make it understanding that Sam would be Captain America, and like with all the underlying tones of racism and whatnot, it was well. But if I was to rank them so far, it would be Wanda, Loki, and Falcon and Winter Soldier. But I know some people have Loki as number 1 because they just didn't like the way that Wanda jumped off. They have not stated yet when season 2 of Loki is coming, but I'm just imagining with all these pieces being put into the multiverse of madness for Doctor Strange 2, we probably won't get season 2 until it'll probably film before, but it'll be scheduled to come out right after Doctor Strange is released. I feel like whatever happens in that movie is going to be a direct correlate and effect to whatever happens in Loki season 2. mainly because we won't have any, like WandaVision is not getting a second season, so we won't have any other sort of conduit to tell us what's going on in the bridge between, an interim between that and Ant-Man. But because there are so many dangling participles laying from just this series alone, I don't know if we're going to finish off what we already have before we jump into the other stuff. So they do have a window to sort of come out with just release dates. I know they've got What If's next, which I would imagine in that Hawkeye will be following, and Miss Marvel to finish off the year. And then She Hulk is filming. And Moon Knight just started. So those five are going to come before Loki. So we won't get Loki probably until at the earliest the summer of 22, but probably the fall. And I believe Strange is in the spring of 22. So it'll come, but I don't think there's any sort of rush or dating of it. But we will continue to have Marvel stepping on our necks the entire time because they are not letting up. What did you guys think of the season finale for Loki? Did it live up to your expectations? Are you happy that you guessed this one correctly and you got Kang, or did you were you even on that path? And are you a little bit upset that you didn't quite get all the resolutions for everything that you needed for this season? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcast. We're there. We just did the last episode was all on Black Widow, keeping it in Marvel, with our guest host Jamie Jarek. And then we did a Marvel pair up on Loki, which we'll be doing our last one this week for Loki and the time traveling movies with our Marvel pair ups. I believe this last one out of all the time traveling movies, it's got to be Terminator. So we'll be talking about that, and you'll find that wherever podcasts are played and here on YouTube as well. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.